Thank you very much, Ethan. Here's your microphone. It is on.
Very good, very good. Thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it. It's fun to be with you. This is a very comfortable chair. I think we're going to have a very relaxed conversation.
Exactly. This is what I was thinking. This might be my most relaxed conversation ever as a journalist. I'm not sure. Anyway, welcome to Zurich.
Thank you.
Have you been here before?
I was here. Can everybody hear me? Yes, this works. Yeah. I was here once before, about 20 years ago. I was here on a book tour and had an incredible time. I did a reading at this beautiful old theater. Thank you so much. And we listened to jazz later, and it was a great night, and I'm happy to be back. I've always wanted to come back. I thought I wanted to live here back then.
Well, it's
still do.
Never too late. Yeah. So we are here to talk a little bit about your career, but also about Wildcat. Now, this is the big movie that you are sharing with everybody at the film festival over the next couple of days, and indeed tonight, I think, is the first showing.
Yes.
Now, I've seen this film, and I'm not going to give any spoilers away, so don't worry. But you are in for a treat if you have got tickets for that. Now, it's really interesting because it's about Mary Flannery O'Connor, who is an American author, mainly of short stories, but also she had a couple of novels as well. But she's quite controversial in her writing. She's a very interesting personal life as well. But this movie you directed, you co-wrote, and it stars your daughter, Maya Hawke. So maybe you can just start by explaining how all of this came together.
Well, all right. It's hard to talk about a movie people haven't seen, so I don't want to be boring and talk, but it was a very beautiful situation that gave birth to this film, which was that years ago, Maya was, 15 or 16 years old, and she discovered Flannery O'Connor on her own, and she came across this little thin book called Flannery O'Connor's Prayer Journal, which was her journal to God around the ages 18 to 22. And she was a young woman growing up in the Jim Crow South, a very turbulent time in American history. And she was acutely aware of the hypocrisy around her about Christian values and what that means. She had this arresting mind that I think Maya found very engaging because she's clearly brilliant and has a lot to offer the world. And she was also clearly in tremendous self-doubt, a lot of insecurity about what the nature of ambition is and what does it mean? Are you really in service of the art form? Are you in service of the reader? Are you in service of yourself? Are you in service of your faith? What is the motivating desire behind working in the arts? And I think as a young person, Maya found that extremely compelling to the point where when she was doing her audition for, she was turning 18 or whatever and going to go to a performing arts school, and she had to audition, and she carved a monologue out of the prayer journal that she did for my wife and I in the kitchen of our house. And it was very, very beautiful. Maya edited together these different pieces of the prayer journal and turned them into a monologue. And I think from that point forward, she began to see this character as, for lack of a better word, a kind of spirit guide. And so when Stranger Things came out and she started to have success, she looked into getting the rights to Flannery O'Connor and wanted to make a movie about her. And she approached, my wife and I run a small production company, and she approached us. She had the rights, and she said, I want you guys to help me make this movie. And so how are you going to say no, right? You're going to say yes. And I started, that's the birth of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I find it quite interesting that you say that Maya had taken the different parts of the prayer book and put them together, because that really comes across in the movie itself. Yeah, she does all these.
Exactly. The movie is narrated by Flannery O'Connor, and we use her own writing to narrate it. So it's all pieces that were part of this audition that Maya had done when she was 18.
Yeah, so you see her doing all these varied characters, all these very different characters in this film, as well as obviously Flannery O'Connor herself. So it's very, very cool. Did you obviously, I mean, Flannery O'Connor is a well-renowned American writer. You knew of her before.
She's well renowned in certain circles. I mean, she didn't write populist novels, and she wasn't a bestseller. She was an artist, and she wrote very peculiar, they're really born out of the South and out of the area that she was living in. And she was diagnosed with lupus. Her father had died of lupus, and she was at 24. We center the movie around just a period. It's just a couple months in her life that center around this moment when she thought she was going to die. She did, in fact, die of lupus, but she thought she had months to live. And in fact, she lived a little bit more than a decade. But her writing is infused with a sense of mortality that she carried with her from a very young age, of not knowing whether she had 6 months to live. Will I see Christmas? Her whole life. So she looked at daily life in a different way than a lot of us do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, so the idea is born. So what are the next steps then? You're directing, you're co-writing, Maya's starring. How did the production work go?
Well, it was really a simple idea. I said that I would try to make this movie, but we had no idea what a movie about Flannery O'Connor would be. I was just her, and so I spent a summer and I read all of her writing. I was away on location, and I just kind of poured through her collected works, and a kind of portrait of her came to me, and I thought it would be interesting to use her own writing to let you see her, to not make a biopic. I wasn't interested in, you can look on Wikipedia and find out all the information about her life. I had a personal moment, which is that when I turned 50, shortly after I'd done First Reformed, and I was struck that when I was young, I had a tremendous interest in the spiritual life. Like a lot of young people, I was really asking a lot of questions, really looking for meaning in everything, and I couldn't believe I was already 50 years old, and I hadn't ever thought about it any more deeply than I thought about it when I was 21. And I found that profoundly disappointing. And then I had a realization that wasn't entirely true, that I had poured all that energy of what you might call a spiritual life into the arts, and that the arts were a spiritual life. When done right, they are a manifestation of your inner life, and that there's something, for lack of a better word, aspirational about that. And then I started thinking about Flannery and how she was an extremely devout woman. Her faith was incredibly important to her. She had an extremely rigorous mind. She was extremely well-read, a very disciplined person. And you see in her writing this beautiful manifestation of her faith. And what was so compelling about it is, unlike a lot of spiritual writing, she never proselytizes. She's never trying to convince you about what you should believe or what you should think. She's just using her own inner light to try to see with clarity the world around her and present moments of, she calls them grace, but they're moments when we're torn open. That's the moments of our life when we're the most vulnerable and we are off the treadmill of our life. Most of her short stories center around a human being knocked off the inertia of their life. And so I started seeing her work as a springboard to talk about something personal to me. And so the idea came that I started looking at her stories and seeing which ones I thought she put herself in. So the idea is that Maya in the movie plays Flannery O'Connor, and she also plays aspects of Flannery in her imagination. And the idea, if thought leads action, then imagination is the springboard for our reality. So the whole math equation of the movie is imagination real?
And why do you call it Wildcat? Because that particular story, I don't believe, is in the movie.
No, that story's not in the movie. That story is one of her first stories that she wrote at the age that we're that were zeroing in on her. And Maya had this idea that Flannery was like a feral cat. You know, people, they see Wildcat, they think of cheerleaders and things like that. But Maya had this idea of her more like a feline with matty hair and wild and a little dangerous. She might hurt you. She might snarl at you. And titles just have a weird way of becoming the title. It just seemed appropriate to me.
I mean, that comes across massively. But I mean, there's another theme that, I mean, Flannery O'Connor is a massive fan of birds. And do you know, I read that on Wikipedia and then I watched the movie and then it suddenly hit me like halfway through. I was thinking, oh my God, there's loads of birds in this movie. There's loads of little tiny things. I don't want to say where they are, but it's brilliant. They're everywhere.
You know, like a cat watches birds. You know, that's kind of what I thought of Flannery. Just this cat looking at all the birds, looking, you know, what's up there? What's out there? Why are we here? What's going on?
Yeah. And
it's very hard to talk in this chair. You really feel like ordering a drink and having a nap. But,
well, it's very warm as well, this chair.
You look very comfortable.
I am, I'm sure. Okay, but talk to me about working actually with Maya. I mean, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I do want to get a sense of, you know, is it hard to direct somebody who you have a relationship with?
You know,
or was it easier?
I made this documentary a year or two ago about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. And while we were making the documentary, I got to interview Martin Scorsese about it. And I asked him, why did I think this is going to relate to your question. Don't worry. Why did I think, I asked him, why did he think Paul, you know, he directed Paul Newman in Color of Money and he knew him and they were friends. And I said, why do you think Paul Newman sustained, you know, so many people fall prey to the trappings of celebrity and the trappings of, isolation and hyperbole, and their egos get overblown and they trip all over themselves. And why did Paul survive? And he said a very simple answer that I loved. And he said it was because of Joanne and that they worked together all the time. And when you work with someone you love, it keeps you very close to love. And it keeps you very close to what makes you want to do this in the first place. Are you doing it to be just to get back to what Maya loved about the Flannery Journal, are you doing it to be a big shot? Are you doing it to be noticed? Are you doing it so that other people think you're fabulous? Or are you trying to support the art form itself? And he talked a lot, Scorsese, about his early films and just photographing his best friends. Now, his best friends happen to be Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, and Joe Pesci, who are extremely talented. But he said when he's working now and working with other people, he tries to see them with the same love that he felt for his best friends when he was starting out. And I say this to say that it's extremely easy to direct your daughter because the love is there. And I'm watching not just our love, but I'm watching the love of performance and the love of writing. In this case, this film is largely a celebration of the power of literature, right? But when love is in the room, then all those lesser powers are diminished. And so it was very exciting and also I had Laura Linney, which was the best thing I think I did as a director, was to invite her in, and thankfully she said yes, but she's a great leader and she leads with her own discipline and teaching Maya about what to expect from the hair and makeup trailer, teaching Maya about how to deal with the AD department, how to make sure you arrive on set prepared. It's just these nonverbal cues that are so essential as a young person coming up in the arts. Laura was a great leader in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in the movie, she's fantastic. And and sometimes unrecognizable.
Yeah, she's amazing.
It's just incredible.
She plays the primary relationship in the movie is with Flannery and her mother, and so all this. Whenever we go into Flannery's imagination, you see these different aspects of that relationship happening through her fiction. So
It's really
Maya
fun.
and Laura both play like 6 parts in the movie.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I mean, I guess the whole reason I wanted to dwell on the relationship with your daughter is because you have spoken about having found some kind of spiritual ground with her during the filming of this.
It's impossible to be near her and not be a part of some spiritual ground that is hers. I mean, she's kind of naturally always been a poet. If any of you know her music, she's just a very ethereal, deep, substantive young woman. And so it's easy.
I have here, are you very religious, or did that change over the time? And I mean, I guess you kind of talked about that earlier. Would you say that you are more spiritual now? Do you feel like you had this epiphany when you were 50 that you needed to maybe look at it and maybe you've realized you have? Do you feel content with that now?
No, God. I mean, I don't think anybody... I would be naturally suspicious of anyone who said they were content with their spiritual life. I think I would run out of the room. You seek meaning in whatever you apply yourself to, right? It doesn't matter what job it is. We're all trying to connect our exterior life, how we make money, how we take care of our children, what kind of friend we are, what kind of spouse we are, what kind of citizen we are, with something that feels authentic to us. And that to me is a spiritual life, right? It doesn't have to have any dogma attached to it. It can. For Flannery O'Connor, the dogma provided a discipline that was very valuable and elevated her to a really substantive way of thinking. The movies, this room we're in right here, has always been the church of my choice.
That's a really nice thing to say. I love that. And you say, you kind of apply yourself in whatever you do in life, but Ethan Hawke, you do a lot of things in life. There's film, there's television, there's theater, and you're also a writer. You have written, I believe, 5 books?
Depending on what counts as.
Yes. Yeah. So why do you write books? Does this scratch a different itch than acting does?
If I've been good at anything in my life, it's instinctual of placing a value on intuition. I have a very strong intuition, meaning your daughter comes to you and says, I want to make a movie. My intuition says, do it. Say yes right now. This is a great time to say yes. And I made a documentary about this 88-year-old piano maestro, and I had this amazing experience of being in this room with this 88-year-old man trying to teach me about the piano. And I felt like everybody in the world should be in this room. He was a magical person. And I went to my wife and said, somebody's got to make a documentary about this guy, and blah, blah, blah. And I called Richard Linklater, and I called Alexandra Shiva, and I called different people. And my wife said to me, you're supposed to do this. And I thought, oh, yeah, I am. And I just do it then. I mean, if there's I'm very good. I get scared later. I when I had the first desire to write a novel, it really started as an experiment. It was just something fun I really enjoyed doing, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I started working on it. You couldn't have stopped me from doing it. I don't get scared until it's too late. I get scared on opening day, and then I'm petrified and cheats and white as a ghost, But I think a lot of people experience that fear before they start. And it might just be stupidity or a lack of education or something. I often don't press the brake until it's too late.
And is this with writing novels, or is this with
anything? I'll tell you what, I'll be coming out on stage on a Broadway play. I remember playing Macbeth on Broadway, and like it wasn't until right before I went on stage, I thought, this is a terrible idea. You didn't go to school for this. What are you doing? This is insane. But it was too late to say no, because I have a good joy. I mean, I really enjoy it.
Be more Ethan Hawke.
No.
This is
no,
what
the
we
key
should be
is
doing.
not me. I think that the key is that each one of us has our own intuition, and that a lot of times it gets stifled, and it could be for anything. And following that, we can't be anybody else. If aging provides anything, you get better at being yourself.
Okay, so then you have this creative urge. You want to make a documentary or write a book. Do you ever get halfway through the process and go, oh, this isn't a book, this is a movie, or this is not a movie, this is a book?
No, that doesn't happen. I don't know why. That's part of, I mean, I've written a couple graphic novels too, and that's a really strange endeavor, but that was really born out of a friendship, of meeting this wonderful artist. And I had kind of talked to him about this story, and we get going on it. And then he sends me these pictures. I'm like, that's amazing. What if, it's kind of like writing a long poem that somebody animates, it's really kind of a thrilling. And I learned a lot about making movies from the work on graphic novels, because it takes so long to paint each one of those pictures that you have to be extremely succinct in what you're trying to say. And that, because I can talk to you, I'd sit here for hours talking and talking. And the discipline of the precision that the graphic novels required helped me in making the documentaries, helped me in my acting. So in general, the original idea has a form attached to it.
Mm-hmm. And how much did you draw on your experiences from the Before Sunset trilogy, where you were kind of going along writing at the same time? And how did that help you with your experiences with Wildcats?
Well, the Before trilogy was kind of a magic, 3 different points over 18 years of my life, where I was being asked, Linkletter is a wonderful collaborator, and he really asks you to join him in the process of filmmaking. And that was really empowering. The experience of having a friend, somebody of your own generation, because I'd had mentors before, older people giving you permission to do things and telling you you're doing a good job or a bad job, but to have a friend really invite you into the process of what it really means to make a film. And he's so interesting. I mean, he's so not interested in conventional forms of storytelling. His brain is exceptional. We made Boyhood over 12 years. It was a really grand idea. Is
this his passion or your passion, the whole long-term relationship development filming style?
We're very good friends, so I think part of why we're friends is that it's a shared passion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I happened to watch the Before trilogy maybe about 3 or 4 months ago by chance, and then I watched Boyhood when I knew that we were meeting, and they're really very cool. I mean, they're such a commitment, right? They are such a commitment.
It was such a funny thing Rick and I were talking about this idea of Boyhood, which is that we'd shoot a movie over 12 years, a short film once a year, and we'd watch a 6-year-old grow up. And I would play the father. That was basically all we had. And we went to go pitch it to different studios. And can you imagine pitching the idea that you weren't make any money back on this for 13 or 14 years? They all were like, I'm going to be fired by then. There was, I mean, it's actually illegal. Because you can't sign a contract for anything over 7 years in the entertainment industry. And so there weren't any contracts. It was just a handshake deal. And so that was terrifying to producers, to investors. So it was a huge leap of faith in the beginning.
So how do you tap in then? So you are this character, way back, when was the first one? 1995. You shoot that film, then you shoot another one, and it comes out in 2004, and then another one in 2013.
Yeah,
So how do you maintain the character over that time?
Oh, it was so much fun. It's easy. I mean, we were really using the clay of our own life to, I was a child. I was raised in a divorced home. I had a divorce in my life, and so that has kind of been a lion in my psyche. And Rick and I both come from Texas. Our fathers are both actuaries. We have a very similar childhood, and we knew where the piece thematically was going. We knew it would change given the year and the circumstances and the kids, obviously, what was happening with them. We would just adjust to that. But I knew that my job was to do a portrait of fatherhood and from this angle. And so it was super fun. For over a decade of my life, it all coincided with this wonderful dog that I had, Nina. And when we started, Nina was a puppy, and Nina passed around the time it came out. And I spent the whole of this dog's life late at night. Every so often I would be walking the dog, and I would always call Rick, and we'd just talk about what might be happening to these characters. It was just kind of a late night call once every other week. Hey, what do you think's going on with these people? And just, you take it one bite at a time. We would just always talk about the next year, the next year, the next year. And it was really fun. And we did that movie. We'd started around before sunset. We made Before Sunset and Before Midnight while we were doing Boyhood. So I was very meshed with Rick during that whole decade of my life.
Because the outcomes are massively different in that the Before trilogy are 3 whole movies, whereas Boyhood is 1 movie.
One very long movie.
Yes, but is that, and it's quite seamless.
Yeah.
And I'm not stupid, but I kept going, oh yeah, they filmed this. Oh, look how they've aged. Oh, it's a shock, and I kept having to remind myself.
What's weird about what you're saying is you made a mistake when you spoke, because you said we aged. I didn't. Yeah.
I got comfortable.
The fun Patricia and I kept saying to each other, well, the kids are growing up and we're aged.
Oh no! But you know what's interesting? I watched the Criterion interview afterwards, because you're obsessed when you watch Boyhood. Of course, you're obsessed with the kids because you can physically see them changing.
So,
and then you were saying in the Criterion thing that actually, when you think about your father when you went to kindergarten and your father when you left school, these are 2 kind of different people, because they also change. And I was thinking about this myself and how this, and it's crazy that we change too. We're still growing up.
We're still growing up.
Not growing old.
Well, we're growing old, and that's okay. It beats the alternative.
Okay, so obviously the relationship with the characters over time is one thing, and I think we touched on it at the beginning, that you also quite like these morally challenged characters as well. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you've got Flannery O'Connor, but then if you look at some of your other films, First Reformed, I loved First Reformed. Yeah. Now, this guy is, it's a roller coaster to watch this guy and the torture he's going through, but also Training Day. Right. There's another character who is morally challenged, even though it's a completely different type of story. I'm yelling at the screen, why is he still here? I would have left in the first 5 minutes. And he still does it, and he still goes. Are you attracted to that?
The life of the performing arts is you just get to step in all these different human beings' skin and wear their clothes, and you get to meditate on their moral challenges. And I remember a few years ago, I got to meet Vanessa Redgrave, and it was really inspiring to me, because you see, if you do this profession right, you can actually absorb a lot about what it means to be alive. Because, you play these great roles that she's played through the Shakespearean canon, Chekhov, and modern movies, and you play a person in war, you play a prisoner, you play a gay person, you play a straight person, you play and you start to see the world through a lot of different pairs of eyeballs. and you try to meditate on what the reality of that point of view is. And I had this feeling when I left her that, wow, this is a great profession if you use it right, because it's a nonstop education of what it means to sit in so many different chairs. And so I don't think that the question of moral characters is unique to me as much as it is to anyone who's been lucky enough to have a sustained career acting. Because if you're going to get the chance to play lots of different kinds of people with any luck. And if you're sensitive to it, it can cut you open and let you grow.
And so do you look then, I mean, there must be many reasons why you take on a role, but is that trying to experience something new? Is that part of it? Or is it, working with the greats like Linklater or what?
It's trusting curiosity and, and good collaborators, obviously. A job, when Sidney Lumet offers you a job, it's different than if some guy's first film, the same script. It's a different conversation, because you're going to be in the room with Sidney Lumet, and generally when people are in the room with Sidney Lumet, good things happen. Antoine Fuqua and I, who made Training Day, we've made 3 movies together. Andrew Niccol, who I did Gattaca with, we've made a bunch of movies together. And I like the warmth and safety of a friendship to work from. That appeals to me. But I think it's always different. I mean, I did this show, The Good Lord Bird, a couple years ago, where I got to play John Brown. And John Brown is such a unique figure in American history. For those of you who don't know, he basically started the Civil War. And he had a resolute passion for human equality, so much so that he was willing to die for it. And that's a very interesting character to study. Mm-hmm. And through, doing these period movies, you immerse yourself in that time period, and that's a window opening up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, is this also then what attracted you to Flannery O'Connor? This kind of opening yourself up to something different?
I just follow. I find the essence of what we do in the arts, right, is you're a storyteller. And I kind of think of it's like you're a conversation starter. So it's like if we're all at Thanksgiving dinner, some people are really good at making dinner. Some people are really good at building the tables. Some people know how to build the house. Some people, everybody has things that they excel at. And the role of the artistic community is to try to be a conversation starter. And you can spend all of Thanksgiving dinner having really banal conversations, gossiping, talking about how ugly somebody is or how stupid somebody is. Or you can have meaningful, substantive conversations that really begin when the meal is over, because they leave you someplace to take off. And I felt like Flannery O'Connor, when I read her, sometimes I felt like I was hit with a bat. I mean, where I didn't know how I was supposed to feel. And I was so grateful to her, so grateful to the conversation that she started inside me. And so as a filmmaker, you go, I want to give that to other people. Maybe they want to hear that, maybe they don't, but that's where the impulse comes from.
Well, we're going to open the floor to questions in about 15 minutes or so. So let me kind of roll back the clock to the 80s. This is when your career started. Why did you want to be an actor? Because you famously said that you wouldn't put acting on a child.
Well, I don't know. All children, a lot of children, want to perform. Children want to be professional athletes. Children want to be firemen. Children want to be actors because they think it's fun to get attention. And so I don't put a lot on my initial desires. I don't put a lot of emphasis on my childhood aspirations for performing. I did like it, and I seemed to have an aptitude for it. And I had this strange storm that came into my life, which was Dead Poets Society, which is through happenstance, luck, a tiny bit of agency on my part, I was in this movie where I was 17, 18 years old with Robin Williams, who is a comic genius. Whatever else you think about him, he's an overused word, genius. His brain is not like other people's brain. He was a miracle to be near. And I had Peter Weir, who was incredibly disciplined master craftsman at filmmaking. And I was shown what that looks like at a very young age. And then the success of the movie showed you the power of art. I mean, you know,
Were you surprised at the power?
I'm still impressed with the power of it. You know, I can walk around today and people want to talk to me about that movie. It was 1988 it came out, you know. And there's people that want to talk to me about that movie that were born 15, 20 years after the movie came out. So whenever you think nothing makes a difference, nothing matters, I always have that experience to go that, well, actually, it does make a difference. People are listening if you speak clearly. And so you can't unsee a moment like that. And so I call it a storm because it's like that blew into my life and changed, like knocked all the chess pieces off. You know, because
what
now,
did you want to be? Did you?
What?
Did you want? I mean, obviously you were in the.
When you're 18 years old, what is it when you're 18? What I wanted is for girls to like me. I mean, that's all I cared about. I wanted to be Jack London one day. I wanted to be Jack Nicholson another day. You want to be, you know, you meet some impressive person, you want to be them. You know, I didn't know who I wanted to be. But once I had the experience that Peter Weir really created, this experience of what it's like to disappear into a character. I mean, that's the thing that actors get a lot of credit and get celebrated in a kind of cultish way around their personality. And the irony to me is always that when it's going really well, there's an absence of personality. There's a feeling when you're acting well that you don't even remember how it went. I always feel like if I thought a scene went badly, I'm right, because I was outside of it judging myself. If I thought it went well, it went badly because I was outside of myself telling myself I'm great. That's the problem. When it really goes well is when you're not thinking about it, when you're thinking about your scene partner, you're thinking about the story, and you feel yourself inside a metaphor. Mm-hmm. There's this kind of feeling of the ego dissolving, you know, and that's just like, oh, it's a miracle. And if you get that feeling, you'll chase it for a decade, you know? And so I've been lucky enough to get little hits of that over the last 30 years, and it's really thrilling. So I don't remember what the question was.
Just, I was asking about how you got started and what to do.
So I started chasing that high.
Yeah.
You know, and I was very suspect of celebrity. I was very, you know, so many of the successful people you meet in the world are some of the least successful human beings I've ever met. And so I was very scared of putting too much credit on that. So I stayed really connected to wanting to write and wanting to direct through much of my 20s into my early 30s because I was so fearful of the parade leaving town. You know, like I needed to have skill set because acting is very challenging lifestyle choice because you're only as good as your opportunities and you need a lot of luck to create good opportunities. I mean, you like First Reformed. I like First Reformed, but it's a little bit of luck that script came my way. You know, I mean, for Paul Schrader to think of me and for like, you know, a lot goes into that. It's a little bit of hard work too, but if he doesn't write that script, if he doesn't offer me that job, I don't have that opportunity to contribute. And so you have to look for ways that you can sustain meaning in your life without waiting for other people to give you permission. So I've always tried to do other things because I was worried they were going to take the candy away.
It's a nice way to put it. You moved from movies then into theater some years after starting the movie career. Was that because you wanted to kind of keep chasing things, to keep things fresh, to keep chasing
to be totally honest with you, one of the things as soon as Dead Poets Society happened, I was a little alienated from my own generation because I was 18, 19 years old, and other college-age kid had just seen Dead Poets Society. And so you felt yourself slightly alienated, and I wasn't comfortable in college anymore. But I really wanted to be around people my own age and make art together. And so I started a theater company with some of the guys from Dead Poets Society and some of the people I'd met through that community, and started a group of friendship that gave my life an orientation beyond whether Hollywood wanted to validate me or not, and it gave me self-esteem and have friends that were willing to call you out and tell you you're not so great. And I admired my friends a lot. And so the theater was born out of trying. The great thing about theater is you don't need, if you want to make a movie, you have to raise a lot of money to do it. But we could put on a play tomorrow afternoon if we really wanted to, and so nothing's stopping you, but do you have something to say? I love that about the theater. And so that was a great, kind of 20 to 25, my life was pretty obsessed with theater.
Do you do much theater now?
I haven't since the pandemic, to be honest with you, but I really miss it.
Okay, let me ask you kind of 4 fast answers, and then we'll open the floor to questions.
Yes.
Not quite that fast. Favorite role?
Favorite role? There's 2 that leap to mind. The Before trilogy is incredibly important to me, and The Good Lord Bird are incredibly important to me. And now and First Reformed, and
this is why it's fast, because it doesn't give you time to think. What about career highlight?
Career highlight?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
The moment you knew you made it.
That's my wife.
Why are you laughing?
Nobody, if you think like, oh, I've made it, you're like an asshole. The problem with, don't you see it in sports? Like 1 second you're celebrating you won the World Cup, and then 2 seconds later the whole team's talking about the next one.
Yeah,
and it's just human nature. If you sit on the back and go, "God, 3 Sundays ago it was incredible," it just doesn't feel good. It makes you feel dead or something. I have had, I talked just a minute ago about, I remember thinking like, it was a great honor one of the honors of my life to play one of the great Shakespeare roles at Lincoln Center in New York City, my place where I live. Felt like, wow, this is a big deal to me. Like if you told me when I was 15 that you're going to play Macbeth at Lincoln Center, like I'd be like, wow, my life is awesome. Now, unfortunately, no sooner did I have that thought than I got terrible reviews. So life is so mysterious that way. Then you wake up in the morning and you're like crying in the bathroom. And you're like, I wasn't thinking I made it. It's full of reality. I mean, life has just got so many checks and balances to it. And there are moments that I've had that usually these little highs where you're like, oh, wow, this is really a special moment I'm having. But they're usually incredibly banal. They're not, for me, I don't know about you, but like the happiest days of your life are never New Year's Eve or the day you got married or this weird time when it was snowing and you're walking in the park and you think, wow, life is all right. They're usually, and I have this theory that it's probably always a miracle that's happening around us. It's just every now and then we're open and available to see it all and to feel it all. But there's never been a moment where I broke my hand on my back, doing it, telling myself I was awesome. You're welcome to.
You are awesome. And what's next for you?
I don't know. You know, our whole industry has been at strike, and so this is a really strange moment because if you haven't noticed, I'm extremely restless, and I like to work. It makes me happy, and I do it a lot. And this is the first time, because, since the pandemic, which was like 5 minutes ago, but where I really feel unmoored. The whole industry, you can't, there's a couple projects I'm planning with Richard Linklater. There's a couple projects my wife and I are developing that we think might be great. But until the strike is resolved, there's nothing real to speak of. It's all like, well, we'll see what happens.
Well, I'll let you have a drink of water because every time you do that, I ask you a question and interrupt you. Please raise your hands if you have a question for Ethan. We have one right at the very back, one over here to the right, and a couple in the middle as well. We'll just bring the microphone to you so that we can hear your question. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hawke. I was just wondering, you were sharing about how connected you are to your intuition and how important it is and how it helped you to go for Wildcat also. I was just wondering if you have any other examples in your life where you really listened to your intuition and it had a positive impact in your maybe personal life or career, where it really kind of opened doors for you and it confirmed that it's important to listen to your intuition, because I think it's really important. And thank you for sharing that. Intuition is truly very powerful.
You know what? I can honestly so many times. The first one that comes to mind is, intuition, not intuition. I don't know. I was very unhappy at college, and I heard about they were doing these casting calls for this film about a prep school, and that there were 7 young men that they wanted. And I called my sister and I said, I'm dropping out of college because if there's 7 parts and I don't get one of them, then I'm not going to be an actor. And I kind of meant it. I knew I was in the wrong place. I wasn't happy. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't feeling good. And I had this idea that I would go to New York and I would audition for this movie. And if I got the part, then that meant the universe was telling me I should be an actor. And if I didn't get the part, it was the universe telling me that I should be a merchant marine. I had a friend who joined the merchant marines, and I had a kind of big Jack London fantasy that I was going to live a wild life and write about it. And I got the part. And I'm so glad I did. I remember catching the bus, leaving Pittsburgh for New York, and being really, really scared. And my mom was in sheets of tears. But I knew I wasn't going to stay. It was a question of what day I was going to leave. And it seemed like I felt very strongly that this was the right day to leave. And, one funny one, a lot of you probably haven't seen it. I don't know if it came out here, but I made this film called Blaze, which is about a country western singer-songwriter that nobody had really heard of. But I really liked his music, and it moved me. And I had a really good friend of mine come over for New Year's Eve, and we were celebrating, and I just loved his music so much, and he made me laugh, and I loved this guy, and he was 6'4" with a big beard, and he's from Arkansas, and I was asking him how his music was going, and he was really, really sad because it wasn't going well at all, and he was in his early 30s, and he's like, he's like, you keep asking me how my music's going, and you don't understand. I'm a chef. Like, it's going nowhere. It didn't work out. And I said to him, think of Blaze Foley. It never worked out for him. It doesn't mean it didn't work out. He wasn't famous. He didn't make millions of dollars, but he made valuable music. And over time, his friends and people who cared about him were sustained by it. And I was saying, think of Blaze. In the fire, it was like 2 a.m, and the fire was dying out. And my friend with this big beard picked up the guitar and started playing Blaze Foley's song. And I said to him, you should play Blaze Foley in a movie. And this little light went on inside of me and said, oh, I'm supposed to do that. Like, there's nobody else. No, I mean, no, this is my job. Like, I don't know what will come of it. I don't know, but it's clearly my job. And in the morning, we were walking, putting away garbage, and buying Gatorade and Advil. And I said, hey, would you do that? If I figured out how to make that movie, would you take some acting lessons and work on that? And he's like, whatever you want, man, I'm in. And we made this movie, and then he won Best Actor at Sundance with the movie, and it was just and we had such a beautiful time making it. And that intuition, the reasons why we did it, always were sustaining, because the reason wasn't motivated beyond anything but this very pure. Well, it was begun with a very honest step. The same with Wildcat, a young person that you care about and you believe in has a passion. It's kind of your job as an older person, as a more experienced person, to help carve a path if they ask for help. So, I mean, so many of the, one of the strong, and then I'll stop, but it's so bizarre. I was in Magnificent Seven doing this, shoot 'em up movie, and I really liked the camera assistant. He was a really smart guy, pulled the focus, and he said, you should play John Brown in a movie. And I was like, what makes you say that? He's like, I'm reading this book called The Good Lord Bird, and every time you talk, I just think you're that guy. And I went home and went to my wife and said, what's The Good Lord Bird? What is it? I couldn't even remember the name of it. And we looked up the book and we read it, and I just kind of followed that. For some reason, it somehow. Don't you ever feel that way when you meet somebody who's important to you? Sometimes you meet a new friend, and in that moment that you know them, and you're going to know them, the sound of their voice or something, and I try to follow that.
Beautiful. Question up the back.
Yeah, I enjoyed a lot this Wildcat, and especially editing this movie. Would you just say a word about how you came out with editing it as such? It's just that it's
Yeah.
very, very a special way of looking at a movie with this editing.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you asking that question, because I've directed before, but I always came at it as an actor. Everything was just about performance. I was interested in photographing the performance. And slowly I got more interested in photography as well, but I didn't know anything really about editing. And over the pandemic, I made this documentary about, it's called The Last Movie Stars, about Paul and Joanne. And I used all archival footage, right? So it was just during the pandemic. We didn't really shoot anything. I just learned about editing and watched how much you could change. I could take scenes from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and change them. And the language and rules of how it hits your insides when you go from a wide shot to a close-up, or a close-up to a wide shot, or a close-up to a close-up, or what the language of the editor, and I put in my 10,000 hours. It was so much editing making this documentary, and watching the material over and over again, which normally the actor in me would just get bored with, and I was really excited with this movie about how to use what I learned with editing, and it was hard, really hard, because you come up with plans in the DNA of all right, this scene's going to be one take, and then I'm going to do a flurry here, but what is the flurry? And sometimes your plans didn't work as well. Editing's very funny because you can have a plan, but it's fascinating because the editor's rarely on set. They just see what you did. And sometimes, we'd wake up at 3:30 in the morning to drive 2 hours to get the sunrise shot, and you'd be so happy you got it, and the editor would say, it doesn't work. What do you mean? It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, but is that the right note to play? Do we need a beauty shot there? What's it doing? You're like, I asked 100 people to get up at 3:30. We're using that shot. He's like, I don't like it. But I just need to say that, like, the editing of the film was very much in my head. My wife and I would say all the time, no deleted scenes. We had so little money to make the movie that every deleted scene was definitely a failure, because it means the money that we spent, when you have 23 days and X amount of dollars to make a movie, if you cut a scene, that's a whole day we could have had to do better what we were trying to do, and so I wanted to have the movie as cut as clearly in my head as I could beforehand, and still give the editor freedom to play, but it was within a certain style. There was a built-in. Anyway, it was for those of. I hope people come see it tonight. For those of you who haven't seen it, but the editing was a huge leap for me as a filmmaker. I feel like that's one thing I'm proud of is that. So I'm patting myself on the back here. Like I said,
well done. Thank you. Let's have one more question. I think we have time.
Who's the favorite person you've worked with and why?
You. You're my favorite person because you don't need to be here, and you are here, and we're working together right now by having a talk with one another. So you, the prize, and in general, that's a great mantra. The best person you're working with is the person you're talking to right now. Being where you are when you are there. There's a great Emerson line, Ralph Waldo Emerson, that I love. Like, what's ahead of you and what's behind you pales in comparison to what is inside of you, right? And it's always there. And if you have it, then so does everybody you're talking to. Everybody. And so that's my favorite person, you.
And what a way to end. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Hawke.
My favorite moment is when my wife started dancing. That was my favorite moment.